Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, the Bronson Sky Library. Today, as you can tell, I am somewhere else. Currently, I am staying at my parents' house while my dad and my sister are in California visiting family. My mom wanted me to stay here with her for the week so I could let the dog out, and that's where I'm at. So, today I have decided to do a wrap-up video of the books that I have read and finished in the month of January and February. I wanted to do a wrap-up video instead of just dedicated reviews for each of these books because I want to get better at doing reviews and better at just recording videos in general. So this is the first video that I'm trying not to be awkward in and actually sound like myself. But that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do a wrap-up video instead of dedicated reviews for these books, because I want to get better at reviewing books, and I thought it would be easier to just do little mini reviews instead of doing long reviews. So that's why this is a wrap-up video, and I hear people like wrap-up videos, so at least, I don't know, I think people like wrap-up videos. Anyway, okay, so that's what this is all about. So the first book that I read and finished in January was, well, technically it wasn't the first book that I read and finished in January, but I have already done a dedicated review for the Faithful and the Fallen series, and that included the last book. I read that and finished that in January. So I'm just gonna skip that one, but just know that I did read and finish that one in January. So I guess technically the second book that I read and finished in January was Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, and I really enjoyed this book. I was very surprised how much I liked it. I honestly thought that I don't know. So this book, it's a fae book. I didn't realize that going in, but the premise of the book is we have this girl who she takes over her father's money lending business because her father isn't doing a very good job at asking the clients for the money back. So she takes it upon herself because her father's terrible at his job, she is living in poverty, and she doesn't want to live in poverty anymore. And so she takes over her father's business, and she starts to get this reputation of being able to spin silver into gold, because she is basically earning back interest off of these people. She's gaining interest off of these people because they've taken so long to pay them back that she's like, you're gonna pay more. And so she's basically gaining more money than what they lent out, and so that's why she gets that reputation for spinning silver into gold. And the Lord of the Fae, he finds that out, and he comes to her and he was like, you're going to spin silver into gold for me. So that's basically the premise. At least that's the premise of the book, and it was very interesting. I really, really enjoyed it. I don't really read many fae books, but I feel like this book did it well because it wasn't truly focused on the fae. I mean, it kind of was, but it was mostly focused on the characters who were not fae, and I really enjoyed that. And also, the writing in this book was very amazing. It was very beautiful, and I just really enjoyed the writing. Sometimes the writing did go over my head a little bit because I'm not that smart, and I was like, I don't know what this is saying right now, but the writing really is very beautiful, and the book is multiple POV, and I found that the characters, each character had a very distinct voice, and I absolutely loved that. And I think Naomi Novik did a fantastic job at giving each character their own voice. And I also read it a little bit, not read it, I also listened to the audiobook while I read the book, so I did kind of like a hybrid reading situation thing. And I really liked the narrator as well. I thought she also did a fantastic job at giving each character a distinct voice, and I think what allowed her to give these characters a distinct voice was due to Novik's writing. And it was a really great book, and I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. If you guys want a book that is a standalone, go for it. If you want a book that is really atmospheric, because that's also, the book was also very atmospheric. It's very cold and chilly. So if you want a standalone, if you want beautiful writing, if you want an interesting plot and great character work, and like distinct voices, anyway, go for this book. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And then the first book that I read in February, the first book so the first book that I read and finished in February was The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. And I loved this. This book was so good. I think I mentioned in my last video that this series might become one of my new favorite series, and there's a reason for it. So basically the premise of this book is, again, it's multiple POV, and we have basically two main characters so far. Well, yeah. Anyway, so one of the main characters, Lynn, she is the Emperor's daughter, and she has lost her memory. So the book starts out with her not having her full memories, and she is trying to show that, to prove to her father that she is worthy of becoming the next emperor and worthy of taking over this bone shard magic. And this magic is very interesting. So this magic, it's essentially like you take a shard of bone from somebody and then you write instructions on it, and then you take those shards and you create what you call as a construct, kind of like animal-like almost. Yeah, I think it's animal-like, and you just write these instructions, put them together, and these constructs basically do what the instructions on the shards tell them to do. So that is Lynn, and that's the magic. And then another POV, another character perspective, is Jovis, and he is a smuggler who is searching for something, and he gets kind of wrapped up in this sort of revolution that might be happening. And yeah, that's basically the book. That's the premise of the book, and it's really good. Oh my gosh. There's a cute little animal companion. Oh man, I loved the characters, each characters, and this book was also very, very intriguing. I loved the intrigue. There was a lot of mystery to it, and I loved that aspect. I loved the reveals that happened throughout this book, and I'm someone who has a harder time figuring out reveals, or like figuring out the foreshadowing that's been happening throughout the book. But this one I actually did pretty well, and I'm very proud of myself. But and that's not saying that the foreshadowing was awful in this. I'm saying the foreshadowing in this was really good. I thought it was very well done, and again, so intriguing that I was almost at the edge of my seat the whole time in a way. Oh my gosh, it was just so good. I don't know how else to explain how good this book was. The characters were all great, and oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's so good. There's also a little bit more magic in this that Jovis is using. I'm still not quite sure how that magic works, but it's pretty cool. Yeah, I think everyone should read this. I think, and Andrea Stewart did a really good job. This is her It was her debut novel, and I think she did a fantastic job at just weaving everything together. I loved how everything came together at the end, and just how there's still more mystery involved at the end of the book, and it just gripped you in a way. The only downfall, I would say, is that I don't really know what the world looks like. There wasn't much of world building in that sense, where it's very Asian inspired, I think, because I know the author is Asian American, I think. So yeah, it's very Asian inspired, and I really enjoyed that, but I still didn't really get much of the world. And I'm kind of sad about that. Hopefully that changes within the second book, and hopefully changes within the third book too. I know the third book is coming out this year, I think, and I'm really excited for it. But yeah, oh my gosh. That's all I have to say, is that this book was fantastic and I really enjoyed it. So the second book that I read and finished in February, and technically I finished it in March because I finished it March 1st, but I only had like an hour left of the book, so we'll just say that I finished it in February. Okay, so the second book I read and finished was Flamefall by Rosaria Munda. That is the sequel to the book Fireborn, which is in the Aurelian cycle. And oh, that book was so good! Oh my gosh, that book was so good. I don't know what else to say other than that book was so good. I think I said this in my last video, that I think that this book is going to be, that this series might be one of my new favorite series as well. And it continues. Yeah, the second book was fantastic. Since this is the second book, I guess I'll tell you what the premise of the first book is and kind of what the main idea of the series is. So the premise is we have these two characters, these two main characters, Annie and Lee. And Lee is the son of the rulers of this regime, and his family aren't really great leaders. At least the people don't see them as great rulers, so a revolution happens. And Lee's family is murdered by this revolution, and murdered right in front of his eyes. But Lee, he escapes from that. And then Annie, her family was murdered by Lee's family, and she watched all of that happen. And so these two end up being orphans, and they end up, after the revolution, they end up at this orphanage, and they become friends. They end up becoming these dragon riders, and they become part of this new regime. And they start to realize that maybe this new regime isn't all that great. They start to realize that this regime might not be better, because there's still lots of faults. And that's basically what the premise of the series is. And the first book was so interesting to see the politicking and to see both sides of things, and it was very well done. And then the second book it takes that politicking and just goes so far with it. Holy crap. Like, oh my gosh. It was so well done. The author did a fantastic job at setting up the first book and then continuing it and going headstrong with the second book. The politicking in this is so well done. And I know that Rosaria Munda, she actually graduated college in political science, and it shows. It really, really shows. I love seeing two sides. So in the second book, Lee, he notices problems in the regime he sees this side as being a bigger problem. And then Annie, she sees that this thing over here is a bigger problem. And so they're both trying to help out this the new their people. They're both trying to help out their people in different ways, and there's like contention among them, and it's so well done. Oh my gosh. So right now there's in the second book, there was kind of three sides to everything. So we have New Pythos, which is the old regime, and they're trying to take back what was once theirs. And then there's a problem happening within the new regime that Lee is trying to help solve. And Annie is trying to help solve the New Pythos problem. And we also get a perspective from New Pythos, and that perspective, he was fantastic too. Like, this perspective, we get to see sides of that. So we get to see like sort of three different sides, and we get to see the problems in all of these sides, and we get to see the politicking that's happening between everything, and it's just so good. Oh my gosh. I will say that in the first book there was a little bit of pining happening between Annie and Lee, and that kind of got old a little bit, and you get a little bit of that teenage pining in the second book as well. So that might be a turnoff from people, but I don't know, they're teenagers. Teenage pining. I thought it didn't really bother me that much. But yeah, oh my gosh. Just the way that Rosaria Munda made you feel for all sides was amazing. Like, I didn't know which side to be on, because I agreed with Lee a lot of the times, but then I agreed with Annie a lot of the times. And I was just like, like, how is she doing this so well? How is she making me feel for each side, seeing each side's ideas? And then, oh my gosh. And then there were characters in this book. There were characters on each side that I absolutely hated. Like, I hated Megara Roper. I hated her. If anybody knows, please share my sympathies in hating her. I mean, she might get better by the end. I don't know. But I did not like Megara Roper. I hate Atreus. And I hate Ixion. Those three, I just absolutely hated. And they were all in different... they were all on different sides. And it was just amazing how, like, Lee was on Megara's side. And I agreed with Lee, but I hated Megara. And then Annie is not necessarily on Atreus' side, but she's trying to help her people and help the new regime. And Atreus is one of the leaders of the new regime. And I hated Atreus, but I love Annie. And then in New Pythos, I loved Griff, but I hated Ixion. Rosaria Munda did such a good job with this. Oh my gosh. It's a fantastic book, and you should all read it. So those were the books that I read in January and February. I don't read much. This is actually the first time I have read 4 books in 2 months. Within like 2 months. I have been reading a lot more recently, and each book has been such a ride. Each book has been really good. So this year is starting off great, guys. But those are the books that I read. Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Check that out. The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. Check that out. And then Flamefall by Rosaria Munda. If you haven't read the first book, check that out. And then immediately go into Flamefall because it was so good. And the ending was fantastic to that book as well, that I immediately had to get the third book. So those are the books. Please check them out. And also, if you guys want to see more videos done by me, please check those out as well. I try to post every Sunday, and I want to try and post on Thursdays as well. So, well, hopefully that will happen. But thanks for watching, and I will see you guys again. Bye!